Hi, I'm Danny Brown, and welcome to another edition of Danny Brown Talks Phoenix. Today, I'm joined by Calvin Eklund of Eklund Refrigeration. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Calvin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your company, and kind of how you got started?
Well, my name is Calvin Eklund, like Danny said, owner of Eklund Refrigeration. It's a family-owned business originally. Started with Bob Eklund in Park River, North Dakota back in 1976. Therein trained my father. My father ran Bomar Enterprises out of North Dakota for 20-some years. He's still a plumbing contractor in the Mesa area today. I've been in the trade for just about 20 years and own my own business for 5 years now.
Wow.
And the majority of our work comes through residential, commercial, and industrial. We do low temp refrigeration, air conditioning, heating, plumbing, concrete work, just about everything.
Wow. Sounds like you're kind of a jack of all trades.
Well, we get into a lot of different things, and we try to help our customers as much as we can.
Yeah. Well, let's start with something very basic. What is the acronym HVAC? What does that stand for? What does that mean?
HVACR is an acronym people in the trade use just to talk about people. They say, hey, call the HVAC guy. It's a lot easier saying that than other things. It stands for heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration.
So if somebody's AC is going out, then they contact an HVAC individual. Correct. Okay. Air conditioning units are a huge thing here in Phoenix. Can you go into a little bit of in-depth explanation on how our air conditioners kind of work?
Basically, what happens is we're removing refrigerant throughout the system, from the outdoor unit to the indoor unit. Basically, that refrigerant is just absorbing the heat that's in the air and moving it outside and dispersing it throughout the air. That's basically how an air conditioning system works. You have your indoor fan that recirculates air throughout the house, the compressor out in the condensing unit.
And the condenser is the thing that's usually outside the house?
Correct. Typically, you'll either see it on residential applications on the backside of your house or up on the rooftop.
And is there a benefit to having on the roof versus on the ground?
Well, I prefer them on the ground just
Sure.
because I don't want to go up and risk my guy's life on the roof. We do it all the time, though.
Sure.
The bad thing about having the split system, that's called a split system. The condenser on the outside of the ground, air handler either in a closet, garage, or attic. If you have it in the attic, it's not the worst thing, but there are preventative ways to make problems disappear.
Can you go into more in-depth explanation in terms of like what problems people would make disappear?
Basically, if you have a condensate drain line, these things are going to take all the moisture out of the air, and the moisture has to go somewhere. So there's a pipe located that usually exits the outside of your house. There's typically one on the top, typically one on the bottom. The one on the bottom is called the primary. The one on the top is called the secondary.
In the primary, you're probably going to see, especially during our humid months, kind of July, August, that monsoon, you're going to constantly see a flow of water out of that bottom one.
Correct. It's completely normal. Don't worry about it. If you ever see water coming out of the top drain, the secondary, definitely give us a call. We can get that fixed really easily, really easy. Usually what we do is just hook up a shop vac and try and plug that line or unclog that line. Sometimes we have to go up into the attic, cut the drain line, clean it out, shop vac, nitrogen.
So if you see water coming out of the top, that's usually a good indication that the bottom line is clogged. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. So are there different types of air conditioners, and do you have a preference on what you recommend people have on their home?
Yes. Typically in Arizona, you're going to have an evaporative cooler. It's an old style air conditioning system. It's very inexpensive, and a lot of the Phoenicians love using this whenever they usually kick on their air conditioners in about mid-April to depending on when the humid season comes. When the monsoons come, they shut those things off and turn their air conditioners on. Now, you're either going to have an air conditioner or a heat pump. The difference is your subdivision has gas or not. If your subdivision has gas, typically you're going to have a gas furnace with a straight air conditioner. For the older communities that don't have natural gas, they typically run off of a heat pump. The air conditioner does the heating and the cooling.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, when your system does both heating and cooling, is the air conditioner is basically just running in reverse, right?
Correct. There's a part in there that's called a reversing valve, and it switches the flow of refrigerant one way or the other. And basically, that's the only thing that separates it.
And is there any sort of pros or cons to having a heat pump versus a natural gas furnace? Not that it matters that much here. It's not that cold, but
the biggest complaint that I have from heat pumps is this. People that have never owned a heat pump or have had a heat pump, they don't understand how they work. And in the winter while they're heating, they are not going to produce the 120 degree air that a gas furnace will. Typically, they're shooting out air between 96 and 100 degrees, which if you put your hand on it, it feels like lukewarm air. It doesn't feel like hot air. Mm-hmm. And it takes a while to heat up the house. But what happens several times during the day, it might go into defrost, where it actually flips into the air conditioning side, and you'll feel that cool air. It's usually only 20, 30 minutes, but when it does it, it's noticeable. Wow. And kids and the elderly especially, they will complain on, hey, what's the deal with this? But that's about the only downfall. There's a lot of benefits as far as energy efficiency, and it's a great style of equipment.
So which system is more energy efficient, the heat pump or the natural gas?
It depends on what you're paying for kilowatt versus what you're paying for natural gas. There is a formula to do it, but it's in depth, and it all depends on your electric company. Also depends on how much you use your system. My preference, I like natural gas, just because when I get home on vacation, I usually just kick the AC or the furnace on, and within 30 minutes with a gas furnace, your house is heated up and you're good to go. Heat pumps, they take a few more hours.
Yeah. Okay. Now, do you have a particular brand that you prefer over others?
What I tell all my customers is I can sell them anything that they want. I can get any piece of equipment out there. I would not instruct anyone to get a piece of equipment that didn't come with a warranty for 10 years. As long as you have a warranty with a 10-year on it, typically these things last for 10 years. After the 10-year warranty's up, they usually break. Yeah. That's not on all cases. I've replaced air conditioners that are 5 years old. I've replaced air conditioners that are 40 years old. So it's kind of hit or miss. But as far as brand, Amana right now has the best warranty that I know of, and it's a lifetime warranty on the compressor, which means as long as you are the original owner of that air conditioner, as long as you possess it as your primary residence and that air conditioner fails, if the compressor fails on it, we'll switch it out for free as far as parts only, non-labor.
Okay. How do you feel about home warranties and the protection they provide? A lot of home inspectors, a lot of people will suggest people get home warranties if their air conditioners are a little bit older. Do you have any opinion on home warranties and the protection they provide people with their older AC units?
There's pros and cons between these guys, but for the most part, if you have multiple air conditioners in your home and one of them goes down, this service is great for you. Because typically what happens is you place your call to your warranty company, and within 2 weeks, they usually send a service mechanic out there. The problem with doing this is sometimes they're more after getting you up and running and a quick Band-Aid or a fix, and they're not issuing or they're not dealing with the real issues at hand. So one thing that I've ran into is a lot of these home warranty companies, you go out on their service call and you say, hey, Mrs. Jones has her air conditioner and it's low on refrigerant. What would you like me to do? And they said, well, is it repairable? And typically, if it's repairable, we'll fix it right then and there. But if it's not repairable and it's in like your indoor evaporator coil, your outdoor condenser coil, basically it's not repairable and you have to switch out the whole new evaporator condenser. After 10 years, they discontinue making these parts a lot of times, or it's hard to find the parts, or even if they have them. So typically what they'll do is they'll say, hey, you'll need a new system. That's the great way and the professional way to do it. The Band-Aid, they have a little can of, it's basically like glue. And they inject the glue into the system. It floats around the system. And any holes, it's supposed to plug up, which I've seen it work. It
sounds like the goo that you put in like a bike tire.
Yep, slime.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
I've seen it work. However, with that, there's moving parts on an air conditioning system. And what'll happen is this stuff gets on those parts and it can mess it up. The rubber on it will deteriorate over time, and just everything wears out. And the manufacturers, a lot of them will void warranty if you inject that into the
system. The home warranty company will recommend putting that in, but that could cause you more trouble down the road.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, do you offer any particular warranties when you do work on AC units? And if people hire an HVAC repair person to come out, should they expect to have warranties associated with the work that's done?
Yes. So basically the way it works is, let's say I were to sell you a new air conditioning system. Typically what that comes with is a 10-year parts and compressor warranty right off the bat. It also comes with a 1-year labor warranty. We do offer other warranties on top of that for additional prices.
And are those warranties transferable? Say if you sell your house to the new buyer, the new owner of the property?
What happens on that instance is when you buy your air conditioner and I set up your warranty verification form for you, I enter all the address with your name. If for some reason you sell that house, what happens is it defaults back to the original warranty, which is a 5-year warranty. Okay. So there's 1-year labor and 5-year warranty if you sell that house. What I would recommend if you are in the process of selling the house, just let me know, hey, we're selling this house. I'll wait to do the warranty verification until the new owner moves into the house.
Okay.
And we can put it in their name.
That's really smart. That's a very smart thing to do. What is the typical cost, would you say, for someone who is in the market to replace their air conditioner?
It usually starts at around $3,500. That just goes up.
Probably based on things like what, square footage of the house?
Yeah, it depends on everyone's instance. Usually if they have ductwork involved, but going right for an air conditioner, 3-ton to 5-ton is in between that $3,500 and $6,000.
What you mentioned ton? What does that mean? 3-ton, 5-ton?
A tonnage. Basically, air conditioners are rated in tonnage. BTUs, British thermal units. There's 12,000 British thermal units in 1 ton. Basically, 5 tons, 60,000 BTU air conditioner.
And so the larger the unit, I would imagine, the more expensive the unit.
Correct. It doesn't go up that much. I feel like it's probably $200 more difference in price from a 4-ton and 5-ton.
So is it worth it if your home only needs a 3 or 4-ton to get a larger size unit?
Well, the thing that people forget when they're talking about replacing their air conditioner is you have an air conditioning system. So that consists of your ductwork, your registers, your vents, plus the air conditioning, plus the line set, plus the wires going from your service entrance panel to your equipment. So when you talk about upgrading your air conditioning system to a bigger tonnage, going from a 3 to a 4-ton, something like that, you have to also replace your ductwork, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Maybe the vents. I mean, it's different flow rates. The air conditioning has airflow rated in CFM, cubic feet per minute. So the duct size is basically for that particular tonnage of an air conditioner.
And so if you went to a larger unit, you're forcing more air through the duct, and those ducts may not be able to take it, is
right.
Kind of what you're saying.
And you really have to watch that. And that's one of the reasons why I tell everybody, hey, before you sell your house, buy a house, have that thing looked at. And a lot of times we can catch problems like that.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that a home inspector will check your air conditioning for you, but really they're at a disadvantage because they can't take things apart. They can't test the Freon. They're just testing the temperature splits. And if they fall within certain guidelines, then they say it's okay. But you could still have major problems with the air conditioning, even though the temperature split's okay. Is that accurate?
Yeah, totally. And I would definitely recommend a maintenance at least once a year, because what I find typically is a small part that may only cost you $50. And I can come out there and I can switch that $50 part out. And if that part fails, that compressor on your air conditioning system might go. And that's a $2,000 repair. Well, having a $100 service ticket versus a $2,000 service
Right.
ticket was very preventable.
So how much does it cost to have to do a AC inspection, or have you come out once a year to do routine service? What does that charge look like?
Flat rate, $85.
$85. That's not bad for that peace of mind. So are there certain things besides doing the annual checkup that people can do to kind of maintain their AC unit and really kind of stretch the life of that, that routine maintenance stuff?
Besides a 1 year or annual or biannual visit, make sure that you're changing out filters. A lot of people ask, well, when should I change my filter? What type of filter should I change? And this is what I tell people. Change your filter when it's dirty. So if you see that 45 days, your filter's really dirty, maybe go 30 days.
Yeah.
Typically what I see is these air conditioners are running nonstop,
Especially
in
right
July and
now.
August.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to change your filter out every 30 days. However, if you're hardly using that thing December, January, February, you might go 5 months without it.
Yeah, we hardly use ours in the winter months, so I don't really change our filters at all because it's not really on. The type of filter, now I've heard a lot of people suggest that you should just get those cheapy 99-cent ones and not pay for those really high-end ones that last the 3 months. What is accurate? What should people get for filters?
There are so many different options.
I know,
out
it's
there
overwhelming.
right now. And even just the air filters are just the beginning of it. I mean, they have different air cleaners that you can put in there. You can put electronic air cleaners in there. They have the ozone, basically where they're shooting out a UV light into the coil that helps. One of my customers, we installed the UV light for him. They actually called us up on Thanksgiving Day and told us to come unplug it because they couldn't smell any of the food cooking. It was that good.
Wow.
As far as the air filter is concerned, in my air conditioner, I do a cheap 99-cent one.
Yeah.
And I throw that thing away every 30 days.
Every 30 days.
My thermostat has a reminder on me, tells me every month, go ahead, take it out. The reason why I do that is because I want more airflow throughout my house. Mm-hmm. If you start putting a thicker filter on it, what it does is it's like putting your hand over your mouth and trying to breathe. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's more work.
So you're kind
for
of
your
choking your air conditioner by having those thick filters in there.
So as long as your ductwork is sized appropriately, I would say use that big filter, and that's going to make your house a lot cleaner.
You had mentioned a thermostat that reminds you. The Internet of Things, everything's connected to the internet now, and you've got these really high-end thermostats that you can install. Is there any benefit to actually installing like a Nest or a Honeywell programmable thermostat or one that's connected to the internet? Do you see a lot of benefit from those?
Absolutely. I would recommend everyone to buy a smart thermostat. It will typically pay for itself within 1 year.
Really?
Yes.
How so?
Just put it on an everyday schedule, and there's certain amount of cycle times for that compressor to start and stop every hour. Mm-hmm. And it's very beneficial, especially if you're punching at 8 to 5 every day and you're on a set schedule. Basically, it has a program on the thermostat called adaptive intelligence. And basically, if it says, hey, air conditioner, turn on and be 73 degrees at 8 a.m. Well, what it's going to do is if it took 30 minutes the day prior to get to 70 degrees at 8 a.m., the air conditioner will actually start at 7:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And it will get you your perfect temperature whenever you want.
That's fascinating. Speaking of temperatures, are there Is it better when you're not at home, like at my house right now, nobody's there, to have the thermostat set up at 85, and then I like it to be, you know, when I'm sleeping closer to like 70? Or is it better to have, when nobody's there, the temperature closer to where I like to maintain it when I'm home? You know, what are the cost savings, and how hard do the air conditioners have to run for that kind of extreme temperature swing?
Typically, what I do on my own house, when I leave for the day, I have my air conditioner set at 85, which is a lot higher than a lot of people usually I see. What I would recommend, whatever your comfort level is at, when you leave for the day, put it 10 degrees higher.
10 degrees.
Yeah. Typically, it's not going to take your air conditioner that long to scale down back to the appropriate temperature. When, let's say, you get home and it's still not a temperature that you like and it took longer, you're going to have to do some adjusting on your time settings. Obviously, the longer you have your air conditioner off, the less money you're going to have to pay.
Okay. Can you go over what are some warning signs that people should be watching for right now with their air conditioners? Things that they should be looking for to give them a warning that they might need to have it inspected or looked at before it turns into like a major issue?
The big thing would be high electric bills. If you see a high electric bill, you might have an issue. Just yesterday, I was at a customer's house, and their air conditioning equipment appeared to be working perfectly, besides actually cooling the house down. When I hooked up to it with my instruments, basically found that the compressor was running with bad valves on it, which it wasn't working efficiently, basically. Costing the customer a lot of money. Basically, the air conditioner was running nonstop, 24/7. So, and not working.
That makes it really rough.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common repairs that you see that air conditioners kind of need?
Typically, what I see when equipment is over the ages of 15 years old, indoor coils are starting to get rusty. They're starting to notice the effects of expanding and contract from the on cycle, off cycle, and they're starting to develop pinholes in the coils. That is typically a deal maker. It's time for a new air conditioner. Not saying that we can't get an indoor coil, but to dump $1,500, $2,000 into a 10-year-old piece of equipment typically isn't the customer's best option.
Right. Spend a little bit more and just kind of replace the whole thing.
I typically say if you're going to be in the house for at least 5 years, make the investment, spend the money.
Yeah. Now, is there ever a time where you would recommend replacing, say, just the condenser, but leaving the air handler alone, or vice versa? Or when you say, the system needs to be replaced, you're replacing both of those things?
I would say as long as it's your air conditioning heat pump system has been upgraded to the new refrigerant, the 410A Puron,
Mm-hmm.
I would say just switch out one of the two. However, if you're having to upgrade from the R22 to the Puron, then you're going to have to do both pieces of equipment. Typically, what we like to do is do them both at the same time, just because we wound it up biting us in the butt. They spent a couple $1,000 switching out the outdoor unit. 6 months later, we get a hole in the coil. Now they have to spend another couple $1,000.
Do you ever run the risk of the two systems not being able to communicate properly? Like, say that you're for computers, for example, you have like an Apple keyboard trying to communicate with a PC. They may not be able to connect properly. Does that happen when you have air handlers and the condensers?
Typically not. Typically, as long as you can match up, okay, we have an Amana air handler, we're going to put an Amana condenser on.
So you want them to be the same brand. You don't want to do like Train and then Amana.
You can.
Oh,
you can. We can make it work.
You can
but
make it work.
I would not recommend it.
Okay, gotcha. We talked about measuring the split. That's what home inspectors look for. What is the proper temperature split that people should be looking at for their systems?
Okay, so the major thing that people forget about is the actual heat load and the enthalpy, the wet bulb, the humidity in the air. that's going to affect that temperature split. So to have an 18-degree temperature split, 20-degree temperature split, that's typically what you will see, depending on the humidity levels.
And that's the split, that's the temperature of the air going into the system versus the temperature of the air coming out of the system?
Yep, supply and return. So you're sucking all that air in across your air filter, that's the return. And you're shooting it all out the vents, those are your supplies. Typically, what their home inspector does is he comes out there, he shoots his infrared gun at the supply and at the return, and if he sees a 20-degree difference, your air conditioner's fine.
According to him.
According to him.
But you should still have someone like you come out and do an actual thorough inspection of the unit.
Absolutely. We can come up, we can hook up our gauges, we can check the superheat, the subcooling, which is checking where the refrigerant levels are in both of those coil, making sure we have adequate refrigerant in those, doing voltage checks, amp draws, making sure all the motors are running efficiently, and see the ductwork, make sure we don't have any air leaks. That's a big thing.
Sure.
A lot of companies don't jump up in that ductwork in the attic.
Especially this time of year, I see a lot of companies that are very adverse to getting up into attics because they're so hot.
Yeah. If you are thinking about upgrading your system, please do it in the winter versus the summer.
Do it ahead of.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And we give specials out too. So.
Oh, really? For the winter months?
Yep.
Very nice. Now you had talked earlier about R22 versus Puron. What does that look like? And I'm hearing a lot of rumblings out in kind of in the inspector world about older AC units, budget to replace because they're on old Freon. Can you go into a little bit of an explanation and kind of break that down for me?
The manufacturers have been switching from the R22 Freon to the 410A Puron since the early 2000s. This has been going
for environmental reasons, correct?
Correct. There's a chlorine atom in the R22. It's labeled HCFC. Well, basically, that chlorine atom, when it's released from the refrigerant, it's supposedly supposed to go up in the air and deteriorate the ozone. So they want to discontinue those types of refrigerants. I don't know if you remember, years ago, they had R12 systems in cars. They changed that out. They switched over to the 134A. And it's just something that occurs. Eventually, they're going to find something that's going to replace the 410A, and they're going to upgrade. It's just part of evolution. We're always changing. The game's changing, making things better and more efficient.
So there's not like a drop dead date where people are all of a sudden having to replace their air conditioning unit because you can't find the proper refrigerant?
No, and to be honest with you, I would say unless you are trying to prevent future problems and make an investment on your air conditioning system, I would say let it run. If there's nothing wrong with it, let that thing run until it breaks.
Until it breaks. Just kind of run it into the ground.
Yep.
I've noticed every year when I do eventually turn on the heat to my home, there's always this like burning kind of smell. What is that, and why is that bad?
Basically, what's happening is the refrigerant flow is switched directions. So instead of the outdoor unit getting hot, the indoor unit's getting hot, and the outdoor unit's getting cold. So all the dust that was on those fins on your indoor coil is now burning off.
Oh, okay.
It's just dust. It's vents. I would recommend before you turn your heating on, give me a call. I can come out there. For some reason, if flames start shooting out of that thing and we got a fire, and which happens.
Really?
Yeah. We can shut that thing off, grab a fire extinguisher, and put it out for you.
So then are you recommending potentially 2 services per year, once before you start using the air conditioner and once before you start using the heat?
I would recommend that, yes.
And that's every year?
Yep.
Very good. Now, is there anything maybe that we didn't touch on that you would recommend to people kind of look out for with their air conditioning?
The big thing that I've recognized throughout the last 10 years is technology, and technology changing, constantly changing. As far as the thermostats go, I've tested out every thermostat out there on my own house just to see how things would operate, what I would sell, what I wouldn't sell. I've had great luck with just about everyone. I may get in trouble saying this, but do not try not to use a Nest thermostat. Nest thermostats, typically when they work good, they work good. But when they're having issues, trying to get support through Nest. These guys don't offer a lot of support. I would definitely recommend Honeywell. Try not to buy a Honeywell thermostat from Home Depot. They're not the same. It's a scaled down version. You don't necessarily have to get it through me, but I can direct you to a link on Amazon that would be a lot better for you.
It's interesting you say that, because Nest is like, when you think of programmable learning thermostats, that's the name that comes to mind.
I've had a lot of issues with it, I guess, firsthand. There's a lot of guys out there that might say they love them.
Yeah.
You know? They're good money makers.
Sure.
But I would stay away from them.
Interesting. I have seen recently a push for these little devices that you can put in different areas of your home, because most thermostats are in your hallway. And the way the thermostat works is it knows the temperature of your house and it runs until it reaches that temperature, correct? But nobody's hanging out in their hallway. They're usually in their family room or their bedroom. So I've seen more and more devices that it's this little like mini thermostat that you can put on the wall. How do those operate? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think what you're talking about, that is just a sensor. It's an air temperature sensor. And what I've seen, especially on some of the newer model builds, is they're starting to zone the houses. So basically, on a 3,000 square foot house, they might have 2 air conditioners. Typically, you would only see 2 thermostats. Well, what they do is each room gets its own thermostat, and they can close off different parts of the ductwork. You see this all the time in commercial, and it's, for the most part, it's great. It allows you to shut different rooms off and hopefully save some money doing that. The only downside is you're not getting the correct airflow needed. So as long as your system is done right with it, you shouldn't have an issue.
But that's on new construction. So
Correct.
for us people, like I have a home that was built in the 60s, I can hang this sensor in my room, and at night, you know, when I'm sleeping, it will communicate to the thermostat that it's actually, you know, 80 degrees in my room, but the hallway's, you know, 75. So it will continue to run the system until that sensor that's activated gets lowered down to the temperature that I want.
Correct. Yeah, it's just a remote sensor, and it's usually like a $40 upgrade. It's a very inexpensive part.
It sounds like it would be totally worth it, because I don't find myself sleeping in my hallway very often.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'd like to run through just some kind of fact or fiction, kind of quick questions before we let you go. You know, fact or fiction: turning your air conditioner off versus up when you leave is more efficient.
Like I said earlier, the longer you can keep that air conditioner off, the more money you're going to save. What happens though, if you were to leave to the Bahamas for the week and you shut your air conditioner off and you come home and it's 110 degrees inside there? Well, first of all, you have to remember your refrigerator. You know, that refrigerator is having to work a lot harder to cool that food down. The other thing is everything in your house might melt. Your candles might melt, you know, your butter. I mean, I don't know. But
I've been out showing homes in the summertime here in Phoenix where they turn the air conditioner off. It's actually nicer outside than it is inside the house, and doors don't close properly. You can actually see paint has started to kind of melt on the walls, and the house just is almost like slightly deformed because it gets so hot in there.
A lot of times what I see is more so is just the stagnant air.
Yeah.
And with the air not being moved, it starts to stink.
Leads me to my next question. Do fans keep rooms cooler? Like ceiling fans or floor fans?
I would, everyone in Phoenix, I would definitely recommend using all your ceiling fans. Also cycling the fan on your thermostat. There's a function on 98% of your thermostats. You can cycle your fan from on to auto. Now, 24/7, keep your fan in the on position. That's in the drier times. You would have to run your actual air conditioner less. You get the feeling of the air movement, and the more, it's more of a mixed air. As far as when you shut your air conditioner off, and one part of the house might be 95, the other part of the house might be 75, that type of deal. So it blends the air. I would also recommend doing this until the humidity. When we get that first monsoon, change that.
Okay.
Change that setting from on to auto.
So like May through June or April through June, you recommend having the fan of the thermostat on at all times.
Yep.
Interesting. All right. And then I think we already touched on this, but do you have to replace your air filter every 30 days?
Just replace it when it's dirty.
And then upgrading to a bigger air conditioner provides you better results.
Upgrading your air conditioner to a bigger system will definitely help your house cool down faster. No ifs, ands, buts about it. As far as efficiency, if that air conditioner is starting and stopping 6 or 7 times a day or an hour, it's going to cost you more money unless that thing ran 3 or 4 times and started 3 or 4 times an hour.
Keeping in mind that if you have to upgrade from a smaller system to a larger system, like you said, you have to replace all the ductwork and everything else to go with it.
Yep.
So we already touched on this as well, but do smart thermostats actually save you money?
Yep.
Absolutely. And if you close off vents to unused rooms, does that help cool the rooms that you're in faster? Is there a benefit to doing that?
Okay, so everyone out there, open all of your registers. Keep them wide open. Never, ever, ever shut a register. There are different ways to move the air that will be a lot more beneficial for you. We install dampers inside your ductwork that help direct that airflow and doesn't actually shut vents off.
I see it all the time when I'm out showing homes, is that people will have a room that's empty, or it's a guest room that nobody's in very often, and they have those vents closed. So what you're saying is that that's actually not smart to do.
Yeah, I would not recommend it.
Wow, that's I've definitely learned a lot today chatting with you. I appreciate you coming out and being on the show. If people want to reach out to you, schedule and have their systems either inspected, repaired, or replaced, how do they get in contact with you?
They can call me on my cell phone, email me. They can visit our website, shoot me an email, however they want.
All right. We'll have all the contact info down in the show notes. Thank you so much, Calvin, for joining us today. This has been another great episode of Danny Brown Talks Phoenix, and we'll see you on the next one.